Okay. Hey, gang, achievers out there. Machen McDonald with Pro Brilliance Leadership Institute coming at you live with my good buddy Michael Goldberg in the house.
In the house like a mouse.
Yes, like a mouse. But
What up, mate?
if he hits you, it feels like a jackass kicked you.
No. I hit like an accountant, mate. Right?
Hit like an accountant. Perfect. Yeah. So let me introduce you to Michael. Michael and I are man, we go back, what, I don't know, 20 years or so. When we were
it feels like 21, mate. It does.
It does, at least 21 in a day. And we had the opportunity to speak at different industry events in the financial services business. And one day, during one of the exhibitor sessions, when we speak, we usually get like a booth to kind of sell our wares and stuff at these programs. And I looked over at this guy, and he's got a speed bag, boxing speed bag hung up. And so I thought, you know what? I'll go over there and give it a shot. And I actually used to box in college. So I kind of pretended like I didn't know what I was doing and kind of, swatted at it. And Michael's like, nah.
I pretend that I do know what I'm doing, mate.
Yeah, he pretends like he does know what he's doing, right? And so he's like, you got to do this. He starts playing a song with it. And I'm like, oh, you mean like this? And then I just started playing another song to it. And he's like, oh, okay, you've done this before. And so that was the start of a really good friendship. We've stayed in touch, lost track for a little while, but we could see each other, from a distance, social media, things like that. And
you remember in that exhibit throwing the Nerf football? Do you remember like in between sessions that it was you, me, and a bunch of other people? I used to bring a Nerf, and we'd get bored because everybody was in session. We had this huge room, and we were throwing the Nerf.
Yeah, indoor stadium, right?
Yeah, but that's the way of meeting people, because people would come out of their exhibits that were spry and they wanted to get involved in the catch. And so beyond the boxing bag, we were just just meeting people that just want to get involved in playing a little ball.
That's it. It's really about play. It's about adapting to things, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But anyway, long story short, Michael is an expert authority on networking. He's written a couple books, Knockout Networking. That's his brand, i.e. being a boxer. He speaks on it all the time, and he teaches a class at Rutgers around speaking and networking and so forth. So we're really, really lucky to have Michael here today. So we don't want you to starve at the barbecue, folks. If you've got questions with regards to how to, do this re-entry thing with everything opening back up, there's some ways to do it. There's a science, there's an art. It's not the sweet science of boxing, but there is a science to it. So we're going to discover that. And like I say, if you have questions, let me know. As a matter of fact, I do see one comment. Oh, it's Mick Collins. These two are a super duo.
Hey, it's Mick Collins, man, the third man in the ring. What's going on, brother?
That's right. Good to see you, Mick, and thanks for joining us. If you've got any questions around networking and kind of moving back into the real world as things open up, just type something into the chat there. So, Michael, we've chatted here and there over the last few months, and with things opening back up, and people, I kind of call it this, awkward adolescence dance that people are doing coming back into the real world. Do I shake hands? Do I fist bump, elbow, mask, no mask? Everybody's a little, not sure. There's a lot of uncertainty, right? And you were talking about restaurants and tents. So tell us a little bit about that and how that's something, it's a model that we can start to use in our own business, regardless of what our business is.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've got a restaurant background. I before you and I even met, I was working in restaurants for 20 some odd years, and that's kind of where I think sharpened my leadership teeth and got my leadership chops. If I have any, but if I have any, it's from there. But big into that restaurant space. So, I was always intrigued with just the operation, not so much being a foodie, but just the operation of a restaurant, and there's just so many skills that go into that industry. There's the people management, there's the service aspect, there's quality control, there's cleanliness and health and welfare and speed and multitasking and, cash handling and on and on and on. Right. So, and of course, there's the Yeah. There's the front of the house, there's the back of the house, and of course there's all the tech stuff that's probably beyond me there. Just from the standpoint that when I was involved in restaurants, we were still getting chits coming in, pieces of paper, and I don't even think that happens anymore. But the restaurants were hit rather hard with everything going on with the pandemic and everything, and I really have a soft spot for owners of restaurants, and small business owners anyway, but certainly the restaurants. And we all saw like our favorite restaurants through the year and 3 months. Many go belly up, which is really sad. So the ones that were good enough or lucky enough to make it, did so because they put a tent out there. They got creative with their parking lot. Some put canopies out, but they just got really creative with the space. And we're able to accommodate outside. And I remember even sitting in a restaurant in New York City, probably close to a year ago, freezing outside, but underneath this canopy next to a heater. And it was one of the few restaurants that were open on the block, but it was open. And it was amazing. So I marvel now that this thing is over, although you watch the news right now and it's now resurgence and Delta variants and who knows where this is going to go. So it's now roll the dice again, depending on where you are. But coming from a place of caution, but you still drive past restaurants today, and you might notice that the ones that were good enough or lucky enough to be open have a tent outside still and have a canopy outside still, even though there's indoor dining. So they realized that there was a business opportunity there, that they were able to, in essence, double their seating. So now it's not one or the other. It became both. They realized that now there's a business opportunity here, and it's fun too. It's fun to eat outside, especially if that's not what the restaurant was designed to do. Many even have takeouts where at first they weren't doing it, and kind of like a food and carry and whatever it is, and they so now that stayed. It's not like they stopped doing it. So I think the restaurants did a great job of doubling and even tripling their seating, and they made it something fun. And what's intriguing to me is that parking lot was always there.
Yeah.
Pre-March 12th of 2020, that parking lot was there. You had access to rent or buy a tent or a canopy, and it was always there, but it was the opportunity that presented itself out of need and self-preservation that created this. And I think it's the same thing right now, today, for business people, and certainly financial advisors, brokers, planners, agents, reps, the whole thing, is that if you're really clever, you have figured out that by using Zoom, which has been there for a long time, by using LinkedIn, which has been there for a long time. Of course, there's more users on both than ever for obvious reasons. But if you're clever, it's not one or the other. It's getting into this whole re-entry period of it's a hybrid. It's not one or the other, it's both. If you're really clever about it, you can double your seating in your practice. As we've done in our businesses, with networking meetings and with coaching and everything else, is that we've gotten creative by using the tech probably more so than we might have.
Yeah. Yeah. Which brings up the question. It's like, what's not in our view right now that needs to be, right? And we don't want a pandemic to force us to have that vision. So, in our discussions, we've talked about the tents, and for anybody that knows me, I'm Mr. Acronym, right? So I always try to make something out of a word so that we can remember it. And kind of what we came up with for tent is, one is to be intentional, right? It's like with different segments of your day, with different segments of your business, what's your intent to experience that? And then we came up with 4 words. So the 4 words, and we'll talk a little bit about this, are thinking, right? So let's think into the future. What's there that we're not seeing but need to see. So as to it's like Wayne Gretzky used to say, when they said, what makes you one of the greatest hockey players out there? And he says, well, a lot of people skate to where the puck is. I skate to where the puck is going, right? And that's what made him so great. And for any athletes, right, it's a lot of it's anticipation. Same for business. So the thinking is a lot about anticipating where things are headed. And especially, with virtual, it's not going away, right? It's here to stay, but maybe in a different way. So, let's think about the thinking. Next is the E, intent, is envisioning. We'll talk more about that. And then the N is nurturing, which is kind of, as you were saying earlier, Michael, it's about the systems. We'll talk a little bit more about breathing the life into the vision that we come up with through the thinking, and then ultimately transforming, right? Our business looks like this today. What do we want it to look like 3 years from today? So, we'll run out into the future, maybe 3 to 5 years. We can't anticipate things like pandemics, but we can look back and say, what are the milestones that we want to hit? So, when it comes to your practice, your business, what are you sharing with advisors, or what are they sharing with you with regards to what they're doing?
Well, I'd say the biggest thing that I get from advisors, especially earlier on, and I'm still having this conversation with advisors. I'm working with more groups. I think you do a lot more individual stuff. So this is usually like with groups where an advisor will say something and others will chime in and ask kind of the same question in different ways, I find. But it's really about how do we get more people in appointments, so whether it's Zoom or whatever it is, and then basically how do we sell to them? Like, we just want people to, either we want new money or moved money and the whole thing. And the comment was like, we always feel like we're a click behind. Like if you're face to face with somebody, it's one thing, but when you're online, it's really hard to have that conversation because it's so personal and it feels very transactional. Well, the reason it feels transactional is, well, because it is. So maybe a first meeting on Zoom shouldn't be that, maybe it shouldn't really be about that. And the second thing is, mindset, which you talk about a lot, Mach, is, what is the mindset around that meeting? Is it truly a prospect where they're meeting with you because they want to do something creative, new, better, different with their money, or because it's a networking interaction? And I think a lot of advisors forgot that there's a difference and a distinction between networking and selling or sales. And they're both important and they're interrelated. There perhaps is a fine line depending on your view. But the reality is that, people don't want to be sold to, and they certainly don't want to be sold to in a 20-minute Zoom meeting. So it's really about cultivating this whole connection thing and coming from a place of being relational rather than transactional. And I think if you can create systems, perhaps around this tent model that we're going to get into about doing that, not only will you get more people in meetings, it'll be more fun. And it could, it could result in more referral business back and forth where it feels more collaborative. I'll just give an example. I had a meeting with a financial advisor yesterday, and I was put in touch with him, and it wasn't for sales reasons. It was really for a networking reason. And there's a backstory I won't get into. But so as we were connected and I reached out to this advisor to, basically have a Zoom meeting and collaborate, his reaction, this is through email, was, I'm not looking to hire a coach. So his knee-jerk reaction was, listen, I don't want to be sold to. I'm not going to create 20 or 30 minutes in a Zoom meeting to have that happen. A, I don't know you, and B, I wasn't looking for a coach, and that wasn't even the nature of where I was going. So I had to send a note putting him at ease. We had the meeting. It was a great meeting, and it's already resulted in something that I didn't even anticipate. But the point was that's how he recoiled, and he's an advisor himself. So imagine how those that we might be viewing as prospects, whether they are or not, might recoil, just because it's kind of how you're showing up. And I think virtual, there's a whole different precedent in terms of how and why you're setting up meetings. And until you understand that, you won't be setting up as many.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. I know for myself, I get a ton of people that say, hey, great to meet you. Let's have a chat. It's like, really, who's got time if you're busy, if you're successful? I don't have time to chat with people. If you've got something of value, let me know, and then we can decide from there. But you said something really important, and that's put people at ease. It's like, I think because the mismarketers, right, the people that don't quite get it and think that networking is selling, they come at you like, the bell hasn't even rung yet. And they're already throwing haymakers at you.
Right.
It's like, it's so natural for everybody to say, I'm not looking for a coach. I'm not looking for this or that. And, how do we put people at ease, virtually? Any ideas on that?
Yeah, of course. Well, I think, once we have a meeting with somebody, you've already got to be in a place of I'm networking. And I often define networking as a learning, helping relationship. It's about learning from but potentially being a resource to help others, thinking that they might help you right back. So if the meeting has that kind of tone and it feels of value, you'll probably get that meeting. But then it's not about turning it into a sales pitch. Like, it should not be a thinly veiled sales pitch. It should not be that. Now, I'm not suggesting that selling is bad. I'm not suggesting that it's wrong, provided that the meeting is set up for that, provided that both parties know that, okay, I'm a prospect, I'm looking for somebody to invest my money for me, or I'm looking for life insurance, or whatever that scenario might be. That's a whole different story. But I still think that there's a relationship aspect to it. But, something that has worked for me, and again, I don't use it as a tactic, it just feels human to me. And I do it today, is once I have a meeting with somebody, I always start off by asking if they are okay. Like, how's it going? It's been an interesting, year and 3 months, almost a year and a half. Is everybody on your end okay? And I mean that, because everybody on my end wasn't okay. So I come from a place of just being human and not being presumptive of just thinking that we're in business as usual, or that we're in our headspace as usual, because we're not. You just don't know what people are going through. I mean, I literally have my dad in a hospital bed right now in hospice. So I'm just very present to what people are going through now firsthand. So I just come from that place. And if they have a story to share, I let them share it. And of course, I'll share mine, but I don't spend a lot of time on it. I don't want it to be doom and gloom. I just want it to be human.
Yeah.
And then after that, I share a story. I'll say something to the effect of, may I share a quick story with you? And if your story is very positive, and it's upbeat, and it's relational, and it's not a 20-minute story, it's like a 2-minute story.
Right.
And then, and often if it's funny, I'm going to share that, and they'll laugh, and I'll say, isn't that interesting? Or has that ever happened to you? And now they'll share a story. And then I think, what happens? What do they call that? A conversation.
Oh yeah, conversation.
Oh yeah, a conversation. And
let's have one of those.
And if it's genuine, it's very often a connection. And now it's collaborative. And now you're in a place where you can talk about almost anything, but it ends up being value-based, because you're coming from a place of relationship, not transaction. And it's a whole different deal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the big struggle that I'm picking up for a lot of people is how to ease back into connecting with people. Right. And it comes back to, just like you said, just be human. I mean, the first interaction, the thing we don't get with Zoom and things of that nature is, we miss some of the nuances. We can't, there's no sniff test because we can't smell over the, so to say, but we can be human. We can connect in, see how people are doing. And, I saw this meme the other day and I thought it was rather brilliant, because I like you, Michael, when I do meet with people, I do connect and I say, hey, how are you doing? It's been a confungled last year. How has it been for you? And, when people do drop down a little bit, when they drop their guard and they're real, they share, we had this, my daughter did this, blah, 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 your dad, whatever. And, so the meme that I saw was, people fake being okay. They don't fake depression. They don't fake anxiety, right? So everybody's gotten really good at putting this mask up of, hey, life's great. I'm pivoted. It's this, it's that. And, under the surface, there's still some pain, right? So if we just connect in, and it doesn't have to be pain, but if we connect in and say, what's really going on for you, and that means sharing the good stuff too, and celebrating the good stuff.
Yeah.
But man, I think that's the key. It's just, how do we just be human?
And as a financial advisor, broker, planner, wholesaler, whatever you might be, field leader, you're also coming from a place, as we are, as coaches, of where you deal with all kinds of human issues. It's not just about moving money from one account to another. There's a story behind all of that stuff. And we're in such a position to be able to help people that if you come from a place of being human, and I know it's very cliche, but right now you just have no idea what people are going through, whether it's financial challenges, whether it's, their kids not getting a shot and they're now vulnerable to this whole COVID thing, whether it's whatever challenges are going on right now. I think they're amped up probably more so, than they have been. So just by being privy to that and trying to get, there's an expression in boxing, like the punch behind the punch, like the jab sets up like your power punches, and, I always think that there's a story behind the story.
Oh, absolutely.
People are sharing of what's going on, like what's the story that's kind of driving that, what's behind that. If you can get that, And again, it's not like to be manipulative or to be tactical. It's just to be human. So it's a great meeting, and you're able to learn about one another, and then wherever that goes, that goes.
Yeah. I'll say this too, and this may sound a little manipulative, and I don't mean it to be. If we know where people are challenged or struggling, and we're having that conversation with people, it's important, because chances are what's most personal is also most universal. And so that allows us, when we're having a first meeting with somebody, to lean in and say, I was talking with a couple other advisors, and they were telling me that they were worried about this, or they're struggling with that. Is that anything that you're up against? Right. And, 9 times out of 10, they're like, yeah, as a matter of fact, that is something that's kind of a challenge. What are these other people doing, or what have they figured out? And it lends itself, it accelerates itself to having a deeper conversation simply by being aware of what people are up against. Right. So again, that
comes back to how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you're coming across as being genuinely human and caring, and again, especially now, because everything is just so amped up, that's probably how you run your business as a financial advisor or a broker. Like that's probably your view of the world, and in which case it's just going to be beyond assets under management. It's beyond that, and I think that just tells a story.
Yeah. And nothing against, advisors that may be more transactional, right? They're still doing a good service. But I know for myself, if I come across an advisor who's just about, the transactions and the money under management and kind of a numbers game rather than a people business, I know for me, that's not going to be a good fit for my coaching style. Right. And so I think for an advisor to know too, who their ideal client or prospect is, it allows them to be themselves, right? Rather than a first-rate version or second-rate version of somebody else, they can be the first-rate version of themselves by leaning into, hey, I am a people person. I enjoy connecting with people. I want to have that conversation, rather than thinking it has to be all about the return and all about, the latest and greatest and best, right?
I look at you, Mage, pulling the Lucille Ball quote. Being a first-rate version of yourself and not a second-rate version of somebody else. That's Lucille Ball. What do you think about that?
I heard it was Judy Garland.
I don't know. Somebody do a search.
Yeah, exactly.
Do a search.
Mick, if you're on it, do a search. Yeah, but it's so true. I love the word author, right? Because it's the root word of like authenticity, authentic. Right. And if we're just authentic, right, we're the authority of ourself, and we don't have to be anything else. And as a matter of fact, I do this one exercise or workshop for people to show them how to be more attractive to their ideal client. And as we go through the exercise, one of the things that everybody, and here's the spoiler alert, everybody at the end of the session come to the conclusion that their ideal client is a mirror image of who they are. Not necessarily, they're not going to be a, 58-year-old white bald guy, but there's the heart, right? There's that core essence that's the same, that resonates. And that's when we know we've got our ideal client. So a lot of it too, when we're out networking and so forth, is being clear on who our ideal client is, and then kind of recognizing, when we're in front of people, is this person my ideal? If not, maybe they're ideal for somebody else, ideal for the network to be introduced to bring them into the fold. So yeah, there's all kinds of energy around that. So, when we go back to the word tent, T-E-N-T, thinking, envisioning, nurturing, and transforming, what comes to your mind? What do you want people to know about that?
You mean that just that whole breakdown of like what tent means and all that?
Yeah.
Rather than intent or intentional or tentatively or
take it in anywhere you want to go. We got.
I don't know. Is this a Lucille Ball acronym? Who came up with this? So what we were thinking is that tent is kind of a process for kind of this whole reentry thing. Is now that we're getting into August, almost August already. Can you imagine the summer's almost over and we're looking at things, and Chase says Judy Garland. You're right. Wow, Mage, look at you.
All
For
right.
years, I thought it was Lucille Ball. Look at that. Wow. I'm blown away. Now I got to change all my slides because I quote Lucille Ball. But I got to go. That's going to be my reentry right there.
Right there.
Oh, man. I've been doing Judy Garland a disservice. But so this whole tent concept that we were brainstorming on was really a process for, I think, reentry, or rebooting into our practice. So we were thinking that tent stands for thinking. Right. So thinking is really about the strategy. It's really about assessing the situation now. And, so now I'll give an example. So, I lead a national networking organization called the Networking Group. And I think some people are actually here from that and major part of that as well. And, so we're talking about a live conference. This is still a virtual meeting nationally. We're talking about a live conference in Tampa, but now we're getting signal that may not be doable in Florida. Is that it's still typically a red state from a COVID standpoint, not a political one. And now with what's going on in Disney right now, who knows, right? So I bring that up because now we're being very strategic in assessing what is that going to look like and what's life going to look like right now, over the next, couple of months. So it's really, what does our practice look like, whether it's coaching, whether it's speaking, training, whether you're a financial advisor. What does it look like right now as we kind of get into August? And so then there's the envisioning. There's, so there's what you think it should look like. It's now, what is it that you want it to look like? And that's kind of your envisioning. So thinking, envisioning, right? There's your TE. Planning, vision, what's your 1 year vision right now? What are your 30-day goals I like to talk about? I know, Mate, you probably have a different interpretation of that. But it's really now the planning now, what does that look like given your assessment? And then the systems. I know you're a big systems guy as I am, Mate. So then that's nurturing. So thinking, envisioning, nurturing. Nurturing is really the systems. And in my world, it's daily fight plans. Mm-hmm. What does your every day look like? It's project plans. What's your 30-day goal look like? And what's the plan that you're going to wrap around that 30-day goal and putting that in place? So now all of a sudden you're playing and working into what your vision is. And then the fourth, which is probably the most fun, is the transformational piece, and that's where change in mindset. Maybe I was being a bit more transactional than I should have been in these online virtual meetings. And perhaps my mindset should be more health, safety, collaboration, human, all this stuff. And not to say that we aren't, but maybe a finer point on some of that stuff. And that's the transformation, how we're communicating, how we're showing up, and then how prospects can best benefit from what we're doing, the communication and the value that we add. So I think it's looking at it through that lens now that we have this extra tent up, and we might be doubling our seating again. So who knows?
Yeah, I love that term, the doubling the seating. Thinking about the challenge I find, and I'd like to check in with you on this too, is the envisioning isn't easy for a lot of people. Right. It's they're not great at predicting or seeing the future, so to say. And they kind of do a lot of their planning from the rear view mirror, and it's a little late sometimes. So, there's a great question for anybody that's in financial services or entrepreneurship. There's a coach out there, the strategic coach, Dan Sullivan. We all know him. And he's got a great question called the R factor question. Right, which is, if we were working here today, 3 years from now, and we were looking back onto today, what has to happen in order for you to feel happy about the progress you've made, both personally and professionally, right? So it's a great way to get people to kind of get in their head, think they're looking in the rearview mirror by actually looking through the windshield of what's in the future. So what are some of the milestones that advisors should be thinking about to be successful in this reentry? Like you said, 30-day fight plan, the 90-day fight plan. Yeah. What's something that's showing up on those fight plans? Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I'd say if I had to shoot a jab at you, it's going to be target market. For sure, which is not a new concept, but I think a very relevant concept right now, is given what you think might be happening, or perhaps what is happening right now, is there a target market that can really value, that we can really be of service with, and I break target market down into industry, profession, market segment, niche, dynamic, demographic, geography. So what does that look like given what's going on? So in this thinking process, strategy assessing, is there a niche market that is really in need of what you might do as an advisor, or certainly as what we might do, as coaches. So that's, I think, the number one ding, 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 ding thing that I see over and over again that advisors are asking me, is to help them to brainstorm and ultimately refine their target market for them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And here's the interesting thing too, is think about this, 5 years ago, well, maybe I have to go 10, but say 5 years, there weren't these social media agencies out there, or as many. Now it seems like you swing a wet rag and everybody's a social media expert. Well, that's a whole new market, right? And those people that are in that market, some of them are successful and they're making some money. They need financial advice. So that's a whole new market that wasn't there a few years ago, right? So what's going to be a new market in the future that we can, again, start to head towards?
Yeah. Or is there a market that's within the market that you already have?
Mm-hmm.
So often when I'm brainstorming with an advisor on who their target market is, I almost always say small businesses or something like that, which to me is like, if you're reducing a fraction, you're at 4/8. So Lucy, still some explaining to do, So 4/8 becomes 2/4 and 1/2, as my 14-year-old daughter reminds me, as she's reducing fractions these days. But so if you took small business and you reduce that fraction to, well, what type of small business, what industry, profession, market segment, niche, and you come up with manufacturing. And then you come up with manufacturing professionals or organizations in the greater, San Francisco area, what have you, right? But the point is that as you get to be a bit more surgical about your target market, then you can start to think about where you need to go, what you need to say, and with whom you need to say it. And it's really difficult to do if you're at 4/8 and small business. Yeah. And I think that's so important now, especially with social media.
Yeah. Now you said something that's really powerful. It's saying say it again. It's the saying what you need to say to the people you need to say it to. How did you say that?
I don't remember.
This was flowing through you.
Well, I
have to watch the replay.
Well, I think I said where you need to go, what you need to say, and with whom you need to say it.
Yeah, where you need to go.
Yeah, right. Because the more intentional and focused we are with our target market and who we want our clients to be, if we're really clever, then it affects the places that we go, both online and off, the things that we say, and then the people that we ultimately connect or reconnect with.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's part of looking through the rear view mirror on this is look at your own past, right? What's your experience in your history with something? That's why I coach financial advisors. They make up like 70% of my market. It's because I had years of experience as an advisor and as a home office executive and an agency manager, so that I can look back and say, I know what's going on in their head and their heart. Right. So it makes me more relatable for sure. I'm looking at the comments here, and Dr. Betty says something that I think is actually pretty powerful. And she talked on the transformation. She says, change in mindset. Right. So it's not just necessarily changing our business, but, what's the change in our mindset that we need to have? I think that's brilliant. Anything you want to add on that?
Well, I just think it's really just, this shift of really making networking, a part of your arsenal. That I think networking shows up a bit differently when we're virtual, and the virtual thing is not going away, because, we're just having way more meetings. So it's just like, as you said earlier, if you're going to set aside 15 or 20 minutes for somebody, it's got to be valuable. So I think that's the big shift in mindset. Is we usually don't go grab coffee, face to face, nose to nose, belly to belly for only 15 and 20 minutes. Like it's usually like an hour venture, or, nothing gained, nothing ventured, a 45-minute venture it is, it's just not like that anymore. Like imagine being in a Zoom meeting that you're not delivering a program that's like an hour. I mean, it's that's like almost unheard of. So that's also like a big change in mindset, is how we treat time, how we treat one another's schedules, kind of getting to the bottom line with things, and just really being sensitive to some of those things, I think, is so important.
Yeah. I mean, you know me, right? Mindset is huge. And here's something that I find, I'll bump up against, it could be any kind of a sales professional or service provider. And there's people that have this belief about themselves that they're not a good networker, right? They don't enjoy the experience. So, part of this mindset needs to be somewhat of a reframe around what networking really is. And you alluded to it in the beginning, where it's, networking is not sales, although it leads to sales or can lead to sales.
It could, sure.
Yeah, it could. But networking is, if we could open up Michael's brain, the expert, the authority on
networking. You don't want to do that. No. A lot of scar tissue up here, man. I get hit a lot.
Well, maybe that's what's needed, is the scar tissue.
Probably.
But there's a belief you have that makes it easy for you to go into a room and to just be human, right? So what's some of the thinking that's going on in your mind that makes it easy for you to network, or makes it easy for other people to network? What's their mindset?
Well, when I'm speaking to people, whether it's online or off, I only have a handful of goals. I mean, I'm usually pretty strategic ahead of time in terms of what I think I want to accomplish, which is why I'm going to be at that meeting anyway. But it's really, I want to put that other person at ease. Mm-hmm. B, I want that other person to have fun. Like, I want it to be a fun conversation, having, spoken to me. And fun doesn't have to be like high energy, although I'm high energy. Fun can be whatever they think it should be. And if I'm making it about them, it should be fun. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing is that I want to learn something and have that other person learn something. Like, that's it. That's my order. So if I could do that, and I find that I'm able to do that probably about a third of the time. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but not everybody is wired the same way. Everybody's got different agendas, different priorities, that's just the way it is, so a third of the time. So if I happen to meet, let's say, 10 people in let's say even a Zoom room, which I think might skew the numbers a bit, I probably only really connect with 3 or 4 of them, because, there's an ease in being able to communicate with them. We're having fun over something. And then there's this whole learning. How do we learn about one another? What do we need to learn about one another? Why is it important? And then if all that happens, then we're in a position to be resources for one another. And that's where it could become, it could become something, even if it's just another meeting. That's saying something. If there's a reason to do that, because you're really building that relationship. But that's my measure. That's it. And I even share these ideas with job searchers who are not wired the way we are, and not wired the way most financial advisors are, because most of them don't want to be doing this stuff. They just want their job. Yeah. So it's now putting them at ease, because now how do they do this? Right? Because they don't come from a place of I need to build a business or build a practice. They come from a place of I don't want to be doing this. I'm not working and I don't feel good about it. So now how do I work a room or a screen? And I try to put their mind at ease. It's just make it about the other person. Be very, very human. Mm-hmm. Just look to put them at ease, because they're probably thinking the same thing that you might be thinking. Try to make it as fun as it can be. Like, leave whatever you've got going on outside, and the third thing is focus on learning, asking questions and learning about one another, and seeing if there's, a way of being resources and being helpful. I mean, I think that's distilling it, but what ends up getting in the way, because that's really easy, and I know this just with your work with advisors, is that this sort of genetic thing kind of kicks in. This financial advisor genetic thing kicks in, that I got to sell something. Like, I got to, and we all have it. We're salespeople too. There's in the back of your mind, like, I got to sell something, and you got to quiet that down. And that's the transformation. That's the whole mindset thing, is if that's going to happen, it's going to happen for, really the right reasons. It's going to happen because you're cultivating a relationship. And then once the time comes that you can have that conversation, it's not necessarily selling that person, it's collaborating. And perhaps you can get an introduction and maybe a referral to somebody that is looking for what it is that you do.
Yeah. You started off with that you prepare. before you go networking. And I think that's brilliant, because it's through the preparation that I think it puts yourself at ease, or could put somebody at ease. And that leads to that first part, which is, how do I put other people at ease, right? First, I got to put myself at ease. And then, if I'm going for my ideal clients, they're probably like me. So what put me at ease, I could bring that to help put other people at ease. So, I would challenge everybody that's watching and listening to create a little bit of a fight plan for yourself of, okay, what are 2 or 3 ways I could put people at ease when I go to an event? So like for me, I have this little acronym in my head. Imagine that, an acronym. And it's called I'm With, and it stands for It's My World, I'm the Host, right? Because I know if I'm having a party at my house, I'm going to act way differently as the host than if I'm going to an event that I don't know anybody. But if I kind of trick myself into, there's no reason I can't be a host to the people around me when I go to this event. Like, how did you find out about the event? Do you know anybody here? What are you looking to accomplish? Having some key questions at the ready puts people at ease, right? So what are some maybe ways or strategies that you put people at ease?
In a live room or on a screen, neither or both?
Well, I was thinking, out in the back 40, just with the cows. No,
yeah.
Give us one for virtual and give us one for live.
Well, I think virtual is easy because you're both showing up to this. You're both kind of in this mindset of we're here. We're kind of locked and loaded. We're sitting in our office. We're in our studio, wherever we might be. So there is this feeling of like a home field advantage. And there's also this set, and I hate to say it, but the M word, the multitasking word. You've always.
Oh, excuse me for a second.
Yeah, you've got some of that. When you're face to face, nose to nose, belly to belly, it's probably a little less multitasking. You're kind of locked and loaded, But a lot of my preparation is I'm armed with questions, like lots of them.
Questions are the answer, right?
Questions are the answer. Yeah. So what if and right now it would be, what are we doing now? Like what do we? I'm trying to make it funny. Like what are we doing now? What's the proper thing? Are we touching gloves? Are we bumping elbows? So if I do it in kind of an easy, fun, whimsical way, I'm already breaking the ice, and I'm already being strategic in how this is going to be. I'm already showing that I've got a sense of humor. I'm light. I'm not taking it all that seriously, but I'm also being empathetic to what somebody might be going through. Right. So right there is kind of how I would just kind of break the ice, and that's kind of when I start to ask about, everybody in your, friends, family, countrymen, everybody okay. So that's where I come from, a place of health and wellness. And there might be something to talk about there, in which case that's our conversation, and so we'll kind of go back and forth with that. And then after that, I just, may I share a quick story? And it's usually something funny that has happened right now, or interesting or relevant. And, and then I bring it back to them. So it's just starting with questions like that. And that's a lot of my planning, Mate, is I just, on an index card, not that I'm walking around with the index card, I'm not, but I just have 6, 7, 8 questions at a minimum that I'm going to be prepared to ask most people. And there's usually a reason why I'm at an event. So if it's to learn more about the hedge fund space, that's where some of my questions are going to go. Is one of my reasons for coming to this event. I was hoping to learn more about and perhaps you can provide some insight. So now this gives me work to do. And then the flip side of that, Mate, is that at networking events, whether it's online or off, is that you're not the only one there looking for stuff. Like the other people are too, or they wouldn't be there. So it's now being able to ask questions to delve into what they're looking for and what's important to them and what's going to make that meeting valuable. And I could just rattle off 8 to 10 questions just with that in mind.
Yeah. And, the great thing about questions, right, it gives other people to shine, right? And, one of my favorite go-tos, there's a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie, right? And, most people trip over themselves trying to think,
I thought Lucille Ball wrote that book. Lucille Ball.
Yes. Had something to do with the conveyor belt and chocolates, I think. But but he said, it's, to be successful, be interested not interesting. And I think a lot of people fall into the trap thinking that they've got to have all the magic quips and be charming and have the charisma to be a good networker. And, because I don't have all that, right? I've learned to be a good inquiry, asking good questions.
It was also that if you are interested, you come across as way more interesting.
Well, that's exactly it. It's
Yeah.
exactly it. And when I got that, it's like, if I'm asking people about their life, about their work, what they're looking to more fully develop, what are their challenges? What are they overcoming? What are they proud of? It's like, man, they get to shine. And, Maya Angelou says it's not, people aren't going to remember what you said or did, but they will remember how you made them feel when they were with you. And letting people talk and shine. I know I'm not letting you talk right now, but if by letting people talk, and share their joy, their wisdom, their gold, they feel good. And now the connection is made, right? That feeling of good is now connected with you because you let them do the talking. So
and there's another ripple to all that, and we do this in our workmates with assessments and things like that. Is people communicate differently. I'm pretty outgoing. I'll talk to this wall for 20 minutes. I'll talk to this heavy bed right here for 30 minutes. But most people aren't like that. So it's giving them stuff to talk about to make them feel comfortable in their own skin, because many people don't feel comfortable. And I'm in this room with people, and even if it's online, I see people that are uncomfortable even with that dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
We were in a meeting last week where there was someone, a CPA, that was in her first Zoom meeting. Her first
last week.
This was Thursday. This was her first Zoom meeting. Like, really? So we were making fun of her, but she could have, and she was great. She was a good,
in a playful way. Yeah.
But she could have just as easily been uncomfortable and taken it the wrong way. So you just don't know, right? So it's really trying to assess, getting back to this whole thinking and vision, right? So thinking is kind of work in the room, assessing the room, like a police officer does. Like they teach a police officer to kind of assess the situation before they put themselves in harm's way. And I think it's the same thing, is I kind of assess the situation. And if I'm speaking to somebody that isn't going to be as confident, isn't as intentional, is a little less forthright, I'm going to consider that and how I show up, and also what questions I'm going to ask them, because I want to make them feel good.
Yep. So the other piece that you talk about is learning. What do you want to learn? What do you maybe want to help other people learn? And then helping, right? There's a local gentleman in my hometown. He serves on about 7 boards. He's just, everybody knows this guy. If Mick Collins is still on the line, Marty Lombardi. In our town, everybody knows this guy. He's a former banker, retired banker. He serves on me with the Bright Futures for Youth. Just a wonderful, wonderful man. And now, just to let you know, there's a strengths finder out there that you can tell how you're wired, and he's wired as what they call a woo. So he's all about relationships. But I asked him, I was being curious and asked him, what's your mindset to be able to just be out there and talk to anybody and that kind of way of life? And he says, Mach, the way that I see and he calls it a ministry, right? He says, my ministry is connecting people and resources, right? So he wants to find out who you are, what you do, how you make a difference, what's your view on the greater good, what needs to shift or change. And it's like he locks and loads that. And then he's off and he's bringing Starbucks coffee to a business and sharing with everybody. He's talking with them, and somebody's gets to know them. They're like, hey, I'm looking for somebody, that could help tutor my daughter in algebra. And he's like, oh, I know so-and-so. And this guy is just always connecting. And, so that's one thing that I would put out to the audience is think of networking as connecting other people with other resources. And if you don't make it about you, it's really easy. If you make it about other people, it's easy to connect in. And then guess what? Who do they remember? Who do they think of? Who are they grateful for? It sets us in that position that we want. So what are some ways, and I know you do it brilliantly, and you're
going to ask me about my ministries. You realize I'm Jewish, right? So I might have a whole different philosophical interpretation
the
of all
tribe,
that.
the tribe, right? But for like your partner with TNG, the networking group, Tommy DeMisa. I mean, both you guys are just amazing at connecting people. You've sent me to people and people to me, and where I wasn't even aware I asked, but somehow you heard something. So say a little bit about how you really listen to what's going on with people to be able to connect them.
Yeah. So, I mean, the other part of communication, of course, is listening. Like with networking, I think you need to be an extraordinary communicator. So it's about the questions that you ask. Mm-hmm. It's about being truly listening, actively listening to the answers. Yeah. It's about being in a position to be able to say what you need to say about yourself, and then being able to ask that of others, like elevator speech stuff, like a way of talking about our business where we're not boring people to tears, like distilling it. And again, reducing the fraction so people get the ask and they get what you do. Maybe not how you do what you do, but what you do, perhaps why, and what you're after, and then it's the follow up and the staying in touch. So all that's kind of the communication of networking. So if you're not listening, then it's kind of like it feels transactional.
Yeah.
Right. So the listening is really what makes it much more relational, because then you can counterpunch. You see what I did there? You can counterpunch with another question. And, to your point, like if I hear somebody in our networking meeting say something and they're not clear about their ask, that's when in the chat box, if it's virtual, or I might just come out and say, well, just, what is your ask? Bottom line it. So this way we draw that out. And because now you're using very intentional language. A lot of people think that they're putting it out there, but they're so caught up in saying the same thing all day, every day, that they may not be as clear as they think that they are.
Yeah. And you're striking a chord, because there's a lot of people that are not great at self-promoting, right? And in business, we have to have a certain modicum of being able to do that.
Yeah, CORD. There's an acronym I see coming. There's be clear, have the right headset, be organic, be relatable, and then be what's the date? Be definitive. How's that?
Perfect.
CORD. Write that down. Record. Somebody's recording this, right? We got this.
I hope so.
Nick, capture that.
Yeah, but it's true. It's like oftentimes it's helping people promote themselves. Pulling out of them. And by the way, here's a little insight, little golden nugget for everybody that's watching, is when you're promoting yourself, you can do it in a way where you're not really talking about yourself, right? When somebody says, what do you do? You can say things like, well, my clients tell me that they experience X, Y, and Z when they work with me, and so you're propping up other people, but it's kind of guilt by association. So there's ways to do that. And I know you talk about how to do that in your workshops and so forth. The other piece with the self-promotion is the ask, right? A lot of people don't know how to ask for what they need, right? I find a lot of people talk around all of it, or they don't ever.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. It's because they feel that the ask is, I want to set up an appointment with you so I can sell you my stuff. Mm-hmm. Versus the ask is that I'm looking to learn a little bit more about hedge funds, or I'm looking to meet people that are buying their first home, selling their first home, downsizing, that are typically in manufacturing, that are 10 years away from retiring, right? So the ask is really about, well, how do I ask this? Because it now becomes about me. But if you're just educating people on, like in a perfect world, when I'm networking, I'm at events like this is usually who I'm looking to meet or be introduced to. It comes across differently, especially when you counterpunch. There I go again with, how about yourself, right? So now it's back to being collaborative.
How about yourself?
How about yourself? How about you? In fact, I always know when I'm speaking to somebody and I'm down the path of one-thirderville, that one-thirder connection, when I'm asking questions, once I get the answer, is after that, it's how about yourself? How'd you get involved in doing what you're doing? As soon as it becomes that give and take, we're just doing some light sparring here. I know that, we're in the round. This is collaborative. We're probably networking. We're probably doing something right.
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing if you're the only one punching, or if the conversation is only, like, ever have a conversation with somebody, it's all about them. They never ask you about you. That's not one-thirder.
No. no. And you know, I'm curious when you bump up against that person. I know there's only one of them out there, but when you bump up against that person, how do you politely disengage or excuse yourself? Do you have a way?
Yeah, it depends, and those are the two-thirders, perhaps. So again, this gets back to the whole thinking and vision, right? So thinking strategy is, as I'm now that a police officer, I'm assessing the situation before I put myself in harm's way. I'm thinking, is this a training issue? Like, is this a one-thirder in disguise? Like, this might just be somebody that's really nice, really eager, but just doesn't know. That's one scenario. And if that's the case, I might chime in and say, may I make a suggestion? This might be a great use of time if we collaborate about one another, and perhaps a gem will come out of there, you know, where there might be a way that we can help each other. Right. So if I think that's there, it's probably there. If it's somebody that is all about them and they know that it's all about them, and I can kind of assess that, that's when I'm going to probably end the conversation fairly quickly. And I might say, you know, Mach, you know, nice chatting with you today. If I could be a resource to you, you know, today at this event, absolutely let me know. Otherwise, good luck today. And I'll just end it. You know, I won't be rude. I'll have a smile on my face, right? But it just kind of depends on where that person's coming from. And I'll give an example. I'm going to use this example intentionally here. Is like you're a life insurance agent that's looking to sell whole or term, and you're having that conversation with somebody. I didn't come to this cocktail party, pricing out, or weighing out whole or term. Like, that's not why I'm here, but that person knows that, so it's really assessing good cop, bad cop.
Got it.
Or bad cop, worse cop.
Or a cop that won't shut up. Right.
Yeah. But it all depends. And to me, it's very subjective. Like, I don't mean to be, tough about this, but if I really like them and I just think they're good, very often it's a training thing. They don't know. And I just give them kind of the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to make it weird. I don't want to make them feel badly. And if they walk away thinking, that was kind of interesting, I just learned something, then maybe I did my job.
Yeah. I heard it once said that, when people just continue to talk, it's a tragic expression of them not knowing how to ask for what they need. Right. So if we can listen with an ear for what's this person needing right now, or maybe just ask the question. So, I hear what you're telling me, What do you need right now? What are you looking for? Right. And shift it to that, because then it allows you to kind of listen with an ear of, oh, I know so-and-so, or have you thought about this, joining this association, things of that nature. So yeah. I love your style of being able to just kind of wrap it up nice and neat. Yeah. and step away.
It's funny. Our friend Mick just posted something like, I'll introduce him to somebody else and then bail, which is very funny. But in all seriousness, if we do that, so if I'm speaking to somebody that's all about them, all they want to do is sell life insurance, and I introduce them to somebody else, that person's not going to look bad. I'm going to look bad. Right? It's going to be like, thanks. You're only as good as your last connection, Mick. Or I'll give you another one that's very funny. If you feel like you don't want to talk to somebody anymore and you excuse yourself because you want to go to the restroom, just be careful whom you're speaking with, because they may follow you right in there.
What are you doing here? Right?
Oh.
And that's the thing, when we're at a live event, we can't pretend like they're on mute, right? Yeah, I can't.
Yeah. Or that you have a connectivity issue, then,
right.
then it's a lesson in human relations.
Exactly. So we're almost at the top of the hour. I can't believe it. It went that fast. What's a parting shot that you'd like everybody to remember or take away or know about what we've been talking about, or even about what your offers are and how you help people?
Well, I do a lot of group work with advisors. It's usually, I do a lot of wirehouse work these days, which is great. And a lot of asset management companies get involved in that whole deal. So I'm doing a lot of that nationally right now, which is great. And a big part of what I'm doing with the advisors is guiding them through what I call a daily fight plan. And that daily fight plan is simply a one-pager. It's a PDF fillable, and I use one myself. This is mine. Like I only use it every day, like daily fight plan. So I use it myself just because it's so powerful and it helps keep me focused on my connections and my process and everything else. So if anybody that is here is interested in getting a copy of this daily fight plan, just ping me on LinkedIn. Knockout Networking, find me and send me a note, and we will make those arrangements because it is really, it's a very powerful tool. As far as a parting comment, and it's on the daily fight plan, so there's a bit of relevance here. If I was going to leave you with something, now that we're getting into, the sort of the dog day months of summer, I mean, we're almost at August already, is consider a 30-day goal. Like, what is it that you're looking to accomplish by, we'll just call it August 31, that is really meaningful, that's going to take you to where you think you want to be by the end of the year, because, things are changing. But the good news is that if you keep that tent out there, that you're double and triple your seating. So in light of all that stuff, what do you want to get done? And then think of the action steps that you need to do every day to get that done. So like Wednesday, what do I have to do? Thursday, what do I have to do? Like really get into that. And then have that find its way onto your calendar. Like put it on your calendar, because that's how you get stuff done versus I'll see if I can find time. Make the time, schedule everything else around that, and you'll hit that 30-day goal.
Yep. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So it's all about being intentional with our business, with our networking. Think a little bit before we just jump into the event that we might be networking at. What's our outcome? What's our goal? What's our process? What are our questions that we're going to have ready? How are we going to put people at ease? What do we want to learn? What do we want to help other people learn? How can we be human? Right? All good, really, really good stuff. So Michael, I want to thank you for joining me today on our productivity pit stop and being intentional. And remember that TENT is to think, to envision, to nurture, and to transform.
Yep, and I will see you on the other end of the rainbow, somewhere over the rainbow, right?
All right, my friend. Good to be with you.
All right, thank you for everything. I appreciate the time, and everybody, thanks for carving out some time today.
Cool. Thank you.